All right, we've got a very special podcast today. It is Titleist launch day, and it is exciting because I get to share this time with two very special people from Titleist, JJ Van Wezenbeek and Stephanie Luttrell. Thank you for joining me. Today is an exciting day. We've got brand new woods coming out, and I know they've been teased on tour. They've been kind of shown a little bit. We've seen them on social. We've seen them in our photos in the forum, but now we've officially got the Titleist GT series of woods, and it's pretty exciting. We've got some brand new drivers, brand new fairway woods. So when you get to a point like this where it's officially launch time, does it take a little weight off your guys' shoulders? Do you feel a little better now that you can officially say, okay, here it is. After all these years of work, here it is.
It's a pretty exciting day for us, Brian, and thanks for having us here to talk about GT. It's been kind of a labor of love for our entire R&D department for probably about the past 6 years. Dan Stone, who was our VP of R&D, this was a creative vision for him, and so for us to be able to be here today to talk about it with you is very exciting.
Yeah, and with tour players hitting iterations of this for 6 years, to finally see it come and the success it's having on tour, to see it in the hands of consumers it's a big day.
Yep, definitely. And I think especially our audience, anytime there's a new driver, they want to know, they want to get their hands on it. Two, they want to know what's it all about. And when you look at this brand new GT line of woods, I mean, a little bit of it is familiar. When you look at the numbering kind of there's a GT2, a GT3, a GT4, and if you look at TSR, which this is replacing, there's similar drivers there. So I think there's going to be definitely some familiarity to people, with Titleist drivers when you look at this new product. But that's kind of where it ends, is where the 2, 3, and 4 kind of numbers are. The rest of it is all brand new. And the most interesting thing is it's brand new and you don't necessarily, it's hard to see it, which is kind of a Titleist thing, which is pretty cool. But you talk about these brand new models, but the look and all that, and the feel, the sound, all that stays Titleist. So is it sometimes kind of difficult to say, hey, we need to keep things looking, sounding, feeling the same, but then we're doing a complete revision here? Because when you set it down, you may not be able to see all the secret sauce, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those challenges for us as an engineering group, as an R&D team, that authentically, we want a driver to look, sound, and feel like a Titleist should. And so as we set forth on designing GT drivers and fairways, that was in our minds. How do we deliver upon that promise, right? How do we give a player a product that inspires confidence, that we can have a tour player set it up behind the golf ball and say, well, what's different? Because it looks like mine. And that's exactly actually what we wanted to deliver upon. We wanted something that they felt comfortable with, but that took their performance to new heights and new levels.
Those are always the hard meetings we have with R&D, is what's next, and the demands that the tour player asks for from an aesthetic standpoint. Take GT3. We were coming off TSR3, a shape that tour players and players loved. Everybody who set down a TSR3 loved that shape. And so we want to take that off the table and say, we need it to look like this. We need it to feel like this, but provide all the other benefits. So we put some pretty big challenges on the R&D team.
JJ likes to always give me some handcuffs, and then, we just figure out how to be Houdini and get out of it, right?
Yep. And you guys did. It's pretty crazy, because I was lucky enough. I was out there at TPI, Titleist TPI, the Performance Institute, last week, or, well, now when this comes out, a few weeks ago. And I actually got to hit the product before I got to learn about the nuts and bolts, which was kind of crazy, because when I went and hit it, I got to see all the performance, and that was amazing. But then to come back in and find out that all these things changed was even more shocking, because, yeah, I didn't realize any of that had actually happened, because you guys have kind of hit it in a way very, very well. So let's talk. I mean, the big thing, the biggest thing, I think, multi-material construction. This is is this the first time for Titleist that we've seen multi-material in a driver?
It's the first time in many years. So we did have a composite product in our 909 line. It was a 909 decomp. It was a max MOI play for us, but this is the first time, and what really sets apart GT is the fact that it's a material that's unique. It's never been used in golf before. And it helps us hold true to that promise of making it sound and feel like a Titleist driver should. The multi-material construction is really allowing us to unlock the performance of all of these research attributes and parameters that we had found performance to give speed, to give distance, and to give consistency to players with.
Yeah, and with this, like you mentioned, the material there, it's not. I mean, a lot of times we see other drivers that have carbon fiber crowns or pieces, and you can kind of see the weaves and things like that. This material here, one, it's painted gloss black, so when you go to look at a driver, you're not going to see it. It's an amazing seamless construction. Like, you don't see anything on the top. It's very clean. But this material, yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to kind of be able to kind of see a piece of it, and it's definitely not just a traditional carbon fiber that you would normally see in a lot of products. I know you can't give everything about it, but I think I've heard that part of it helps with the kind of the sound and feel and keeping that the way you guys wanted it, but also you kind of had to go a different route for what you wanted to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, our proprietary matrix polymer, I kind of have a sample, and it's probably similar to what you saw when you were out visiting us. This polymer is allowing us to tune the acoustic frequency of it. So when you go and you drop it, it actually has that metallic resonance. And that's something that we were seeking. We knew that players loved the way that Titleist drivers sound and felt, and we wanted to hold true to that promise as we step forward into a multi-material construction.
Yep, and it is. The sound and feel is extremely good. I would say maybe just a hair more muted than TSR when I was kind of hitting them side by side. I thought it was just maybe a touch lower frequency and just a little bit quieter, but the sound and feel was still really there, and it was really pleasant. I was really shocked at how good it sounded and felt after learning that it was built with multi-material. But with that it's not just kind of the crown either. It actually kind of folds underneath the driver as well. Like, it isn't just a crown that's kind of glued onto the top. It kind of more than that encapsulates more of that club head than just that. And for doing that, is that basically taking a lot of weight and moving it other places that you can use it?
Yeah, a real key for us, and I've kind of got the crown wrap to show you here, but the way that the crown intersects with the head and with the titanium part now is that it not only fills the crown space, but it wraps down onto the sole. And in doing that, it allowed us to really discreetly place those bonding ledges and those interface joints in areas where we wanted them to for discretionary mass purposes. And so it's allowed us to optimize our mass distribution and really achieve a center of gravity with stability that we had been unable to do prior.
Yeah, and center of gravity shifted just a little bit throughout all three models, right? I mean, I think kind of they've shifted kind of just maybe down and just forward just a little bit on all three.
Yeah, through our motion capture testing, that's one of the things that we have continued to study, and we knew that by being able to align our CG more closely with neutral axis, and when we say neutral axis, just to explain that in layman's terms, when you look at a driver face and you look at the center of the face, essentially that is, and you draw an axis through that perpendicular back, we want CG to be as close to that point as possible, and then by doing that, you're able to align center of gravity with max point of deflection of the face. Not only do you get great high launch, low spin attributes, but you also get maximum ball speed from that contact and that efficiency of momentum and physics. And so center of gravities in GT on all three models have moved lower and forward. But in doing that, we've kept the model disparity, and we believe that center of gravity depth is a fitting tool. That's the part of the reason why we have GT2, GT3, GT4. We know that players can time those differently, and they're absolutely options for players to consider when they step forward into a Titleist fitting.
Yeah. And when you look at kind of that, I think anytime anybody hears kind of a more forward CG, they automatically think, well, that driver's just lost a lot of forgiveness, or it's going to be harder to hit. And yeah, it's going to be great for the better player, but for the player who needs a little bit of help, that's tough. But part of this kind of multi-material design, you kind of take away some of that. The TSR2 and even the 3 and even the 4 are definitely forgiving drivers, even though they have a slightly lower and forward CG, right?
Yeah, so on GT, one of the key ways in the way that we've been able to optimize mass distribution is obviously with the introduction of the seamless crown, but we are using split mass technology. So we're isolating an extreme amount of mass low and forward in the head, and that's allowing us to really achieve that low forward CG. But at the same time, the aft portion of the head, we've been able to really place all of the remainder of that discretionary mass deep in the aft portion. And that teeter-totter, that balancing, is what's giving great speed, but also great stability to every product within the GT lineup.
And with this kind of new design and the look, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see kind of Stephanie hold up that kind of head that's blown apart or exploded, as we call it. JJ, is it pretty interesting when you tell some of these players on tour that, hey, this isn't just all titanium anymore? Like, this is a radically different design. Like, do any of them kind of know right out of the gate, or do they can't tell, like I couldn't tell, and you have to tell them that, hey, yeah, this isn't just all titanium anymore?
Yeah, I think that was the interesting part, is we use our tour players to help gather feedback during the design. So whether it's Justin Thomas or Will Zalatoris, they've hit iterations of this. It might be unfinished, unpainted, that had big seams in it. And then they might have, we've had prototypes out here that had 3 or 4 different materials, where they're literally testing materials to help tune in the driver, different structures inside, all those things. So when they see the exploded part first, to be fair, there's some concern. Is this going to look how I want it? Is this going to sound how I want it? And then you pull it out of the drawer and they're like, wait, that looks amazing. And then I wish we just had a collage of facial expressions from players' first hits. That sometimes that first hit's a surprising sound when you know it is versus if you don't know it is. And then when you see, look down at the launch monitor numbers and see the ball speeds and the launch and spin, it all starts piling up.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have had an interesting face as well. Probably not that, because I didn't know, and I was just saying, wow, it sounded really good. So I unfortunately probably wouldn't have been as surprised as some of them, but it's definitely interesting there. And you mentioned, ball speed there, and the faces totally redesigned on these drivers as well, right? We've got last year TSR, or last generation TSR, had kind of 2 different faces depending on TSR2, TSR3. Now we've gone away from that, but we've integrated kind of the 2. And we're getting kind of the best of both worlds in all 3 drivers.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. The technology, as we seek to build our best line of drivers to date, it's how do we keep building speed, right? We've got speed through aerodynamics. We've got speed through center of gravity position. We've got speed through face design. And the speed ring and the VFT designs, the marriage of those two, the way that the speed ring works is essentially it constrains the outside area of the face. And what that leads to is more local deflection at face center. So it's more ball speed on center, where everybody wants more ball speed, right? But the real key to this is because that perimeter is constrained, we need to optimize the VFT pattern. And when we talk about VFT, it's variable face thickness. And so we start with an incredibly thin face insert, and we build it up layer by layer so that we can control CT and characteristic time to the USGA regulations and maximize the performance. But in doing that, you end up with this very thin outside area of the face insert, and that leads to great sweet spot size and ball speed retention on off-center hits. And I know that JJ's got some stories with respect to that. Players have seen the ball speed consistency, and honestly, they've been really shocked and surprised. But we, as engineers, we were just counting on it because we knew what we had designed into it with those 2 key face technologies.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing when you talk about forgiveness. Is we got to talk about it in a couple different buckets. Like, one thing for a tour player, forgiveness is ball speed retention and spin consistency. When we hit that heel shot and we lose ball speed and the ball spins a lot and I'm short in the right rough, versus that heel shot where the spin didn't spike, the speed stayed up, and the ball geared into the fairway still, and you're like, your playing partners don't know you missed it on the heel. That becomes a really big deal for players. And I think that's the one that's really stood out for players. It was kind of funny during launch week. We got to the point where we were asking players to toe it and heel it just to show the experience, because you get that player that's really centering it with all the new graphics and everything else, that you were asking for mishits just to show them how good it was.
Yeah, I noticed. I mean, right away when I fitting, I gained 4 miles an hour over my TSR, which my TSR2 to GT2, which I mean, for a person like myself who definitely doesn't find the center like tour players do, it's still impressive. But that's the other thing to where I think a lot of the public out there look and they say, well, driver faces have been maxed out. And while yes, there is a USGA limit of how hot some of these faces can get, there are still improvements to be made. And as you just mentioned, that is proven right there. I saw it right away between previous gen now, like I said, 4 miles an hour, and that's like that's not a nothing stat either. I mean, 4 miles an hour is a lot going between two drivers. I think that it's definitely significant, and it shows up in terms of yardage. So whether it's a player on a professional tour or up and coming to a professional tour, or a pretty much a hack like myself, you're gonna have the potential to see some definitely noticeable gains with the GT series.
Yeah, I think, and that's what we're finding from having 3 distinct models that do such a good job, is you can use the fit to really control your direction. Using SureFit Hosel, using SureFit CG, using the 3 different model types. And then the construction is going to give you the ball speed and things like that. So if you're going against something that claims to be really forgiving, it doesn't mean it's straight and it doesn't mean it's long. That you want to utilize those 2 things together as a fitter to say, here's the fit that provides you the best distance, and then the club is providing consistently that shot.
Yeah, and then the face material is still similar, or the same material that you used in TSI and TSR, basically the same titanium material, just done differently on the back. So for the front side, it's very familiar. The graphics are updated, but very familiar to the last TSR, TSI, but it is the same material, right? Or similar?
Yeah, the ATI 425 that we utilize on the face, it's an aerospace grade titanium made in the US. It's part of what has allowed us to continue to leverage and increase face performance year over year, is that we're still learning about the bounds of what this material can do. And so as our engineers, we love to put our our thinking caps on, and how do we push it even further. And GT is definitely that next effort of marrying the material and its best properties to maximize performance in terms of ball speed on center and off center.
Yeah, and it was really cool from a tour standpoint of having R&D kind of listen and see what we were doing. For those of you on Golf WRX, you'd see the silver Sharpies on the side of some of our tour players' faces with Max Homa, Justin Thomas. We were using that to really frame the golf ball and really help aiming. And we took that tour feedback and integrated it in, because we found it helped pretty much everybody. And so it was a great way to integrate that visual that our tour players were asking for, and really down to it helps you center the ball and aim at something very far away and see that improvement.
Yeah, coming off from the week I just had at DP World Tour, that was probably the most resounding feedback, is, when a player set the club behind the golf ball, they said, this looks like my driver. It looks like the same shape. If I gamed a TSR3, GT3, profile-wise, very similar. But they said, but the face, I feel like all I can do is hit it out of the center because of the new alignment features.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to bring up in terms of shaping. I think, again, JJ, you mentioned fitting, and fitting's so important out there, because, even with my fit, I have found I went up a degree in loft, went to a slightly different shaft, whatever. It wasn't just like, oh, you went from TSR2 to GT2 and everything's the same. Like, it is different. But the fitting portion of it, some people get a little kind of, they think they should be in one driver when maybe another should another would work better. And the nice thing was, when you set down GT2, GT3, and even GT4 to some extent, you almost can't tell which one you're looking at. They all look so similar. GT4 maybe just looks a little bit more compact, but when you set down 2 and 3 next to each other, it is very hard to tell the difference. If you set down 2 9-degree heads and put them next to each other, you almost don't know which one you're hitting. And I think going into a fit environment where somebody maybe has a preconceived notion of, oh, I'm this type of player and I should probably fit into this, it doesn't matter, because when you look at them, they're going to look identical. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to help with just psychologically looking at a driver and having confidence in it.
Yeah, we got good feedback from Charlie Hoffman during some testing out here at TPI. He had a good line, I thought, is you never want a driver to give you a reason to not love it. And he goes, when you set this down behind, it just looks so great that, yep, flight, feel, sound, performance is all going to add up. But if there's something that distracts me, the face doesn't look right, there's something on the crown, there's different lines going different ways that I can't aim, I'm going to start trying to make a swing that kind of overcomes, where he's like, this sat down and just GT2, GT3, GT4, he hit all 3. It sets, I can aim it, I can swing my swing, and then let the performance and the fit drive where you're going to end up.
Yeah. And you had a little funny story, I believe, with Max Homa as well, who was hitting kind of the two different models and almost didn't know which one he was hitting, right? Like he was kind of testing out both and didn't know which one he was actually hitting at the same time. What happened there with Max?
Yeah, Stephanie and I were out in Arizona. We were getting kind of the final cosmetic samples, spending some time with Max, and we kind of switched up the order of things for him, where he thinks he's just going to hit same, and we kind of did some shuffling of the deck, and I steal from Aaron Dill. You always hand the club without the player seeing the bottom, which Aaron's really cool at doing, hiding the grinds from folks. And we gave it to Max, and he stripes one. He's like, God, this is really good. And then he flips it over and goes, wait, this is the 2? He thought he was hitting the update to the 3, had hit it really well. It sounded more like his. To your point, it was a little muted. He has that, Grandma rat glue in his TSR3. So it was just kind of that cool experiences that we kind of nailed all the shapes in that, again, we're not making it divisive, is a player could play any of the ones that fit them.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting because I thought the same thing when I was kind of getting fit. I knowing some of the stuff, I try not to look too deeply at it. And my fitter Chris over there, who's absolutely phenomenal, would just hand me stuff. Like you said, soul down, just hand me the shaft first. I grab it and just hit it. And yeah, it was hard to tell what you were hitting, whether you were hitting a 3 or a 2. Now 4 for me doesn't really fit my game, so I kind of knew right away that was a little bit smaller. But when we look at kind of the line overall, the GT2, GT3, GT4, in just general terms, kind of who is kind of the player when you look at him? And again, you're going to see on tour all 3 of them being played. But if you look at kind of like just in a very broad, brush stroke, what is kind of GT2 versus 3 versus 4 when you're looking at kind of the players that they'll kind of gravitate towards?
Well, we can start with GT2, and the first and foremost, GT2 in our lineup, it's the most stable, most forgiving. It's our deepest CG, highest launch. It has low spin now because of the characteristic, but not our lowest spinning within the lineup by any means. And so, the fact that you were probably well fit coming in, Brian, I'm not surprised that you ended up going up in Loft with it. But in doing that, you achieved better launch conditions that led to significant distance gains for you. And then we do have head weight flexibility within that GT2 model. GT3 is our option that offers precision CG, so heel toe adjustment. We've moved it now low and forward in the head, and taken that split mass construction and pushed the remainder of the mass into the back. So it's that best combination of having gear effect side spin effect, where you can align CG with impact location, or you can affect shot dispersion patterns through that heel toe adjustment, but also really delivering it in a fast chassis that launches and spins kind of in that mid-launch and a little bit lower spin than where we are with GT2. And then on the 4, we like to think of the 4 as kind of our ultra low spin killer for that player that either cuts across it, generates too much spin, or is really high speed and needs spin reduction. The 4 with that flat weight forward and the heavy position is a great option for that. It's a 430cc shrunk down version of a GT3, so really classic pair profile. But now, because of how we've shifted all of the CGs, now if you utilize our 4-aft CG adjustability in that model and flip the heavy weight to the aft, you end up with a position that's actually, I like to call it a GT 2.5. So if you find yourself in a fitting and you're a player that needs kind of launch and spin between a 2 and a 3, the 4 can actually be a great chassis, and it does that in a package that just looks awesome as well. So that's kind of the lay of the land. And JJ can probably speak to what he sees in terms of kind of the usage on tour as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of tour player, a lot of times we use it in those kind of launch windows. So we take GT2, it fits Will Zalatoris really well. Coming off his back injuries, he really wants to make sure that he is not getting too much side bend, not getting too much lift. So now we give him speed with easy launch and some spin that doesn't get too low. So it allows him to just create launch. So that player that's down a little bit to level, that GT2 works great. At a tour level, where average attack angles are in that 1 to 2 up, GT3 fits a ton of people because not only is it amazing looking, it's fast. We've been able to increase launch a little bit while decreasing spin a little. So it fits that player that's kind of in that level to a little bit up. And player like, Cam Young, utilize the SureFit track. He kind of wants to not see that ball go left. We can shift that CG out there a little bit and really keep him under control. And then you have a player like Ben On, who really hits up on it and is looking to make sure that isn't overspinning. And GT4 is the perfect spot there, where we move a little heavier weight in the front, a little lighter weight in the back, and it lets them control spin. So you can kind of use your flight and your direction control to kind of help guide the model choice.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember when TSR launched, you guys were really excited about TSR4 because same thing. If you were to kind of move some of the weight around, you could make it, as you guys called it, kind of like a 3.5. And now to see even more drastic improvements and say, hey, well, this even fits a wider range of players. It can kind of be a 2.5. Just kind of speaks to kind of the advancement as things go along and moving from TSR to GT, and that there's still a lot of places to go. We're not stuck. We're not at a wall here with driver technology. There's still a long way to go, and there's still some big improvements that can be made. And yeah, like you said, I mean, for some players that would, like for me, would never think of the GT4. Maybe I could put it in the bag at some point. When I don't really, I mean, I don't need to. I can fit into 2, but to show that it's not out of the realm of possibility, during a fit is pretty cool to see.
You and Gordon Sargent and Kim,
Yeah, we got plenty of players in the 2.
Yeah, I'm good at the 2. I love the 2. I go into it, and every time I say, give me something, when I set it down, I know I can hit it a little bit off the toe, and I'm okay, and that's what I want. So don't give me the most demanding thing in the world. Don't make it look tough. Give me the easiest thing to hit, and I'm going to go with it. And that's what ended up, for GT2 for me. And you mentioned spin retention. That was the biggest thing, was seeing 1, ball speed, and then 2, from good to bad shots, a spin variation that was like 250 RPM. I mean, it was like it was so tight. It was really wild to see that, and to see that toe miss that usually kind of overdrew and ran out into the rough on the left, that really stayed in play, which was pretty cool. And that was the biggest thing I saw between my TSR going into GT.
That's great. It's the same thing we're seeing with tour players, and that'd be the thing for folks as they start to get fit, is looking at their highest ball speed and their lowest ball speed, their highest spin, their lowest spin, their highest launch, their lowest launch. That level of consistency, really stands out and is something you'll really see on the golf course.
Yeah,
I like to say
definitely.
GT and the technology, what it helps to deliver is it makes your longest drive longer, but it also brings forward your shortest drive. So it kind of closes that gap. And that's the consistency that I know myself as a golfer, and I think all golfers are looking for. They want to see that downrange distance remain consistent and be incredibly stable.
Yep. So yeah, drivers absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, I was extremely impressed when I got to hit them. But the multi-material story doesn't end just with drivers. When you move into fairway woods, that story continues. Now it's a little different shape, a little different design, but fairway woods, similar thing. Went to no longer all just steel. We've got a composite top as well now for TSR 2 and 3. So, or TSR GT2, GT3. I'm trying to keep them all together.
2 years, right?
I know. But yeah, even fairway wood. So a big fairway wood story, which we're going to see, probably on tour and in your fits, a big jump in fairway wood performance as well. That wasn't just something that just kind of went by the wayside. I mean, you guys put a lot of time and effort. What does it kind of take to go from TSR to GT and moving into this kind of new world in terms of designing these heads with these new materials and new designs that we have retail haven't seen before?
Yeah, Tom Bennett, who's on our Metalwoods team and works alongside JJ and I, he sat down with JJ and said, all right, let's talk about feedback. Let's talk about what I've heard from the market. Let's talk about what you've heard from the players that you work with on a week in, week out basis. And there were 2 things that really came through to us. And one was, how do we improve flight? How do we help fairway woods launch higher without added spin? And that is really key, because obviously for distance control and consistency purposes, but I don't know of a single player in this planet that doesn't want to see a fairway wood get up and go, right? And so that was kind of design objective number 1 for us. And then design objective number 2 was, how do we help fairway woods improve from a turf interaction perspective? And so we entered into this with those 2 goals and strategies in place. And the proprietary matrix polymer that we utilize on the driver, we're also utilizing it on the fairway woods. And in fairway woods, because they're stainless steel, the mass savings is even more impactful and greater. So it's helping us to achieve our lowest center of gravities that we've ever had in fairway woods. And what that does is it moves center of gravity closer to neutral axis, which helps promote higher launch and lower spin. In doing that, we've also paired it with some shape changes that strategically allow the 2 and the 3 to be more differentiated. And we've also made them so that they interact better and sit better on the ground. So you can kind of see that leading edge profile on the way that it sits closer to the ground now delivers more playable surface area on the face to allow when you miss it on the toe or you miss it on the heel, the ball actually impacts now higher on the face. And that's really allowing us to deliver exceptional feel and exceptional consistency with these GT fairways.
Yeah, the look is really good. I think I was, coming from TSR2 in a 3-wood and setting that down, the GT, that was kind of the first thing I noticed when I set it down was just like, wow, this looks really good. And it looks a little bit more clean. And that's, for me, a weird thing that hosel into leading edge is always an area I look for on every club. And there's certain ones that they look really good. Other ones kind of have, to me, a weird angles or roundnesses to them. And I think this is extremely clean. It looks really good. And yeah, that was the first thing I noticed setting it down was just like, man, I really like the look of this. But like as you said, I mean, definitely easy to launch. And then there's also, not only with the composite technology, you've got a kind of a brand new face design as well with the L-cup face, right?
Yeah, that aspect of how do we make off the turf shots feel and perform better. We've now introduced an L-cup face technology, and essentially what that means is we take the face insert on a fairway wood and we wrap it down onto the sole. And so I know it's hard to see in the video, but you can kind of see that there's a flange now. And it allows us, because we're forming this out of an incredibly high strength material, to make it thinner. That helps us to improve compliance or improve ball speed on low face hits. So now your center face shots and your low face shots, they're more consistent from a distance perspective, but it also improves feel. And those are attributes that we've already heard from the players that have experienced. I think Max Homa is one of the players that immediately went into the GT fairways, and he commented on the feel to both JJ and I as well.
Yeah, kind of all the pieces and parts together. I think we're getting feedback from tour players. I think people would be amazed how often Stephanie and I talk about the toe section of a driver. Just the hours about one little corner. It was a really cool meeting with Liam McDougall, who runs our DP World Tour, and Tom Bennett, who handles our fairway woods, where they're on the ground in a conference room talking about that area of a fairway wood that's very impactful. And really working on those minute shaping changes with technology to drive all the other parts of it, and just seeing players, like Max Homa comment on those feels, those speed retention, a player like Ben On, who has actually played 1-iron in the bag, put a 3-wood in the bag because it sat so good and flew so easily in terms of launch angle. A player that had given up on 3-wood for a few years, tried everything under the sun. We had put him in a 1-iron, being able to integrate a 3-wood in his bag because it launches so easy. And I think that's been the fun part to see, is a player swing for the first time and their eyes go the wrong window. They're so used to just seeing that 5-6 degree launch 3-wood, and all of a sudden they're 9 or 10 and without spin, and go, wow, that could be a game changer for me.
I actually saw that with Chloe Robinson, who's our LPGA Tour Clubs rep, and she was working with Alexa Pano at the Meyer a couple of weeks ago for the launch, and Alexa immediately saw the launch characteristics, and she's like, you know what, I think it might take me a week or two to feel comfortable with the driver. She goes, but the 3-wood's in the bag straight away, and it allowed us to then open a door and look at her 5-wood too, and give her 2 great options that just gives her more playability going into the greens on par 5s, as well as when she chooses to use it off the tee.
Yeah, and I have to believe that 3-woods, especially when you talk to kind of players at the professional level, it seems like those are kind of the clubs that stay in the bag the longest. Like when you look at one of Greg's what's in the bag photos, on the website, it seems like you look in there and they a player may have the brand new driver, they may have the newest wedges, they may have the newest irons, but it seems sometimes, or a lot of times, those fairway woods just kind of stay, and they've got older models in there because they're comfortable with. And with this one here, I mean, are we seeing, again, kind of like driver, are we seeing a pretty good adoption on the from Tour on these brand new GT fairways?
Yeah, I think every fitter on the planet will tell you the hardest club to fit in the bag's 3-wood. It just
Yeah.
has to do everything. It has to be long and straight off the tee, but I want to be able to hit it high off the ground, but not too far because I can't have it too far from my 5-wood and too close to my driver. So I need it to be long, but not too long. I need some launch, but not too much spin. I got to be able to shape it both directions. So its hit list is really, really long on what it has to do. So from a tour player standpoint, it takes a couple laps to kind of vet it out. Is I need to hit it in a left to right wind, a right to left wind, into it downwind, tee shots, off turf, off different types of turf. And so all those takes a little bit of vetting. But, our first week we had JT Poston. He's a TS2 user. When we showed TSI, TSR, they were close, but they didn't vet everything out. And then the first week, he goes from kind of a 9 3,500 flight to a 10.5 3,200. So our peak heights only came up a few feet, but it got there a little different, which was an intriguing thing for him. And so that's when we start moving around the range, get away from, the launch monitors and go, okay, let's hit into the wind and watch this flight and go, wow, that's high without ballooning. And then hitting it into a right to left wind and going, oh, I can hold that wind a little bit better. On the left to right wind, I can still get launch and I can hit the high soft one. You start kind of playing all these games and go through. Aaron Fleener, his caddy's really good memory on, hey, let's hit the shot from course X on hole number 7. And you'd see JT just hit it over and over again, which was really cool to see that performance. And then him put it in the bag at a U.S. Open, which is very challenging, and have a bunch of 3s off the tee and a couple off the ground, and have tons of success with it.
Yeah, it's it definitely, for me, it's one of those where I'm the same way. I think when you find one that works, it stays in the bag for a little while, and because like you said, you just get comfortable with it. It's the club as an amateur you go to if the driver maybe isn't working that day, and there's other reasons for it. So yeah, and having something that you can step up, set it down, and go. Now these two, I mean, with the kind of adoption now, or kind of going back to a lot of high lofted fairway woods between GT2, GT3. I mean, we cover everything from strong, almost 2-woodish, down to 7-wood, and kind of everything in between. Especially with the Sherbet hosel, you can kind of dial in almost any degree of loft that you need. Is it sometimes kind of hard to because I know you can get a 7-wood in GT2, but they don't make it 7-wood in GT3. Is it kind of hard not to make just everything in both lines? Because I feel like with the demands maybe on tour and stuff like that, or from us, Golf WRX junkie type people, we want everything. Is it kind of tough to kind of separate and only make certain lofts for certain fairway woods?
I think that's always a challenge, yeah. But at the same time, we try to think about what is the player that is going to most likely use this. And we consider GT2 to be our best all-around playability fairway wood. It's not overly deep. It sits great on the ground. It's playable from both fairway, from rough, from tee. And so when we think about where does a 7-wood fit in the line most often, it fits right there with that all-around playability. And for that player that really kind of hits a fairway wood with more of that sweeping style. When you look at the three, we've increased face depth slightly on it. And so, and we also, as we think and we design these, Tom and the team, they work towards shaping them in such a way that, once you get to the 5-woods and the 7-wood, the shapes pare down and they almost become this bridge between the two lines. Obviously, it has to carry a name, but I've seen it in mixed bag setups out on tour many times where players will play a GT3 3-wood, but then they'll go and move into a 7-wood that's in the GT2. So the shapes are not so disparate that players can't really move into those shapes and really find the performance that they need out of them.
Yeah, Tom often sends us out with a box of plastic heads and says, when you look at that GT2, that 13.5 is a little bigger footprint because a 13.5 player is going to probably hit it off the tee a lot.
Yep.
And then have those options in that 15, 16.5, and then, like Stephanie said, paring that down and really getting that 7-wood shape that's going to work great out of the rough, great out of the fairway, great into par 5s, long par 3s, and work in a lot of places.
Yeah, and that's what the kind of what I liked about it, because I went driver 3-wood, 7-wood, and 7-wood for me, I mean, I'm a guy who tends to hook the ball. That's my miss, and it's scary sometimes, but having something that a 7-wood that you can set down, it looks straight, looks square, it doesn't look closed, and just to kind of have that confidence is huge. And the shaping on those, both the 3-wood and the 7-wood looked really, really good. And it's definitely something where it's something I look for. And it was very easy to kind of set that down and just hit it, because you knew, hey, the face isn't pointing left. I don't have to worry about it going left as much. And then kind of dialing in loft and all that and shaft and all that through the fit was great. But, setting that head down, I mean, for me, like you said, a lot of tours, you can kind of look at something and immediately kind of write it off. And, with the GT Woods, I mean, from 5, I think I hit 3, 5, and 7, and all of them, I mean, they look phenomenal at address. I'm not a 13.5 guy. I don't quite have that kind of height and that kind of firepower, so I'll leave that for some other folks. But the 15-degree heads and the 21 was pretty good. And then like you said, I mean, what's that?
I was just going to say, I think that's a fun one though. That 13.5 that you just mentioned. It's now, it used to be, it's the same size and overall volume as what we had with the TSR2 Plus, but now we've integrated it into the GT2 lineup. So for those players that utilize a 3-wood more as kind of that driving type of golf club, that maybe, 60% of the time it's more off the tee club versus off the fairway. That option of it being a little larger footprint just inspires the confidence, and now it's kind of fully integrated into the GT2 line, but it's still incredibly playable off the turf too. I think it's surprising for players that didn't think they could hit that, how well that golf club elevates.
Yep. Yeah. I'm sorry, JJ.
Go ahead. No.
But I noticed that with TSR, when that TSR2 Plus, when it came out, I noticed how easy that was to hit. And yeah, for me, I need loft. So for me, 13.5, I got to go to the 15. I just need the loft. So that's the only reason I can't go 13.5. I just need to get it up there as high as possible. I'm just too flat.
Yeah, we're getting a few 13.5 D4 settings, like a sneaky good. I want a little bigger footprint and something a little go-y, but lots of easy launch off the tee. It's a sneaky good fit. D4 setting, 13.5 GT2.
See, there you go. I like it. You get the input on what's working there, a little tour sauce to kind of show what's working there. But that's awesome. So August 1st, I mean, this is today, so these are out. I mean, definitely go get fit. Titleist fitting events all over. Go to Titleist.com. You can find one near you. I always have a blast. I got fit for my T-Series irons at a Titleist fitting event, and it was an absolute blast. We got a hit. I mean, the folks out there who run that, I mean, they do an awesome job. I know the local Metro Detroit guys were awesome. They had every shaft you could think of, every head. So if you're going to thinking about getting a GT wood, definitely go get fit, because it definitely is eye-opening. One, to see the difference between your current driver, whether it's Titleist or not, and the GT series is big. And then also, I got put into 2 shafts and fairways that I would have never thought. So, the combo in terms of, head and shaft and loft and all that, like it was 2 that I didn't think of. So, but they worked out great. So I'm excited to get out and play those more. But officially out now. So go check it out. Go to Titleist.com, find your local fitting area. JJ Stephanie, thank you so much for breaking down GT Woods. I know it's going to be a super exciting summer here, or rest of the summer with everybody getting out and trying these and seeing more on tour. So before we go though, what I want to know, driver fairways, what's in your bag for GT right now?
Oh, I'll lead it off. I've got GT2. I am a high launch low spin player, so I'm in an 11-degree model, and then I'm a 16.5 GT2 fairway, and then I have the 21-degree, so I go 16.5 is my 3-wood or 4-wood, and then my 21-degree is my 7-wood, and then I migrate into the TSR hybrids still with the 1 hybrids. But I ended up changing shafts as well, so kind of surprising. I went I was using kind of our old air speeder that had been a featured shaft for us in the past, but I moved into the Denali Red CB. So I really like the stability and the feel of that. So that's in the driver. And then I went with the Denali Blue in the fairway woods, and both have been really great options, and can't wait to get some more experience. I've been on the road with this guy for a few weeks, launching all these on the global tours, and I have not had a whole lot of reps in, but looking forward to getting some more in this summer.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a mid-launch player, so yeah, GT2 for me on the driver, GT2 15, and then who doesn't love a good 7-wood with a GT2 21, which feels unbelievable and is just the go-to get out of any trouble situation.
Yep.
we're all 7-wood nation.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually have the same setup as you, Stephanie. I went 11-degree GT2, the 16.5 turned down. I think turned down one, and then the 7-wood at 21. So, but yeah, it was cool. It was fun to hit. So, again, thank you guys so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Excited about the new GT series. I know the forums will be going nuts with everybody else's experience as well. So it's going to be a fun rest of the year to see where people go with things. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Brian.